final module, we focus on evaluating the degree to which we have fully implemented PBIS as planned. We refer to the degree to which PBIS is implemented as planned as the fidelity of implementation. The key question asked as a part of fidelity assessment is, are we doing what we said we would do? Clearly, the best plans that are implemented in an incomplete or ineffective manner cannot be expected to affect change. The evidence is clear that schools with higher levels of implementation fidelity have better student outcomes. Both higher academic scores and fewer suspensions are associated with implementation fidelity. Assessing the fidelity is an important task for the team to undertake on a regular basis. Again, if we're not doing what we plan to do, then all of our work and planning have been for naught.
Creation of the system. Again, I think for her, like she's been saying over and over, voice, the teacher voice from all teachers in the building, that collective bargaining, I want to say, that's the important piece to make sure that all teachers are involved in the creation of it, and it becomes a baby for the whole school. Everybody's cradling it, implementing it, taking care of it.
Well, I was going to say, in a high school, when kids have 7 classes per day, it matters because they're getting 7 different perspectives as well as throughout the hallways and all their transitions. So consistency, you can't argue against it because it is evident in just the daily schedule.
It's, I think we've worked really hard to kind of talk with our staff about, first of all, we are all here, we've chosen to be here, and many of our students are, I would say, some of the highest need in the district. And when we think about our students who, do we want them having to decipher 7, 8 different sets of expectations? Or do we want to front end make it possible for them to have very clear, identifiable goals and work really hard on those specific things so that they can accomplish the other academic and behavioral and social things we want? And like I said before, I think the biggest way that we've gotten buy-in on those clear expectations is kind of like with students, we're not going to let them mess up. We want them to feel success. There have been teachers when we've not let them experience anything negative. We really saturate their experience, and then they say, oh yeah, this is easier. The kids are getting so much more out of it, and so am I. And so I think going back to why are we here, why did we choose to be here, and then making it possible to have a really good experience with those positive expectations, it's really helped us.
There are several available instruments for evaluating fidelity, all of which are very similar in both content and process. Further, all are available online for free. The TFI, or Tiered Fidelity Instrument, is the most commonly used instrument for assessing PBIS across multiple tiers. The School Evaluation Tool, or SET, is identical to the TFI but looks only at Tier 1 fidelity. Both of these instruments can be found on the PBIS.org website as free resources.
Well, I think it makes you kind of feel fulfilled as well, because PBIS is kind of a general. With the TFI, it says, are you doing this? 0, 1, 2. And the fact, as she said, that we're getting the majority of 2s, it makes me feel like, yes, I'm doing it correctly. Our school is doing it correctly, because I didn't go to school for PBIS. It was after the fact and still learning. And I think every year it's about improving too, because you want it to be 100% all 2s, and we're still not there yet. So it always gives you a little bit of a map on what you can still do better to really say, yes, we're a PBIS school with fidelity in all areas, which is going to be a hard thing to do because you have different staff, you have different kids every year, all that, lots of factors, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that being said, the fact that there is something to kind of guide that path makes it, I feel, fulfilling.
The Benchmarks of Quality instrument is also commonly used in schools. Rather than a score, this instrument provides a more checklist type of assessment, identifying specific tasks that are not adequately implemented. The ABRI School Assessment, or ASA, assesses multiple tiers but with a focus on reading and math in addition to behavior. An 80% fidelity score on the behavior component of the ASA has been found to be associated with significantly lower suspensions in PBIS schools. While each of these instruments is unique, they all assess the same essential features of PBIS implementation. All Fidelity measures look at how the team is developed and its meeting schedule, the development of key rules by location in the school, instruction of the key rules, feedback for positive behavior, and an agreed-upon continuum of corrective consequences, and data on behavior that is used to evaluate the effectiveness of PBIS.
Okay guys, welcome. I know this is your first meeting for the year, and I know that you all probably meet about once a month. Thanks for letting me join you. One of the first things that we'll talk about is the TFI. So that's one of the first things that you guys will tackle as a committee here. And so the TFI is a way that we can judge and sort of look at what you're doing, how it's working, if it's working well, if it's not working well. There are different ways that we'll look at things. We'll be able to look at data, look for holes, talk to people, look for patterns within your building, the way your structures and systems are set up.
So how do we use the information from the TFI?
So we'll look at the information, we'll look for patterns, we'll look for holes maybe within the structures and supports that you already have in place or within those systems, and we'll see what works and what doesn't work and decide how to move forward.
Notice that the coach reminded the team that the focus would be on observable criteria and that all 3 tiers are to be assessed. In addition, the coach was able to begin this assessment by asking to see examples of the team's own agenda and minutes. Now let's look at how the school's development of rules is assessed.
So I'm looking at the information and I see that you guys have comprehensive school-wide expectations. Talk to me about how we came about those, or how we came to the decision of what those were.
Well, we started by forming a committee, who most of us were on that committee, and we really wanted to pinpoint specific areas of the building to start with that every single student was capable of doing or following those procedures and expectations.
We also made sure that our teachers had voice. We sent out a survey for the teachers electronically, and they were able to have input, and we took it to the SBDM and got it all approved. We wanted to make sure we had everyone's voices.
And again, involved the students, wanted to make sure that they were aware and capable of doing these things, because we wanted to raise the expectations.
We also wanted to make sure that we got support staff involved and check with people like the cafeteria workers and custodial staff as well.
The first part of the assessment of rule development involves simple reviews of handbooks to see evidence of rules. The second part involves a walkthrough, looking for evidence of rules being posted and interviewing staff and students.
Oh, there's an anchor poster up here.
Oh, great.
They have all their expectations listed.
Indicators of those expectations are there.
Yep, describes what they look like, sound like.
School logo.
Hey Quincy, good afternoon.
Good
Can you name for us the school expectations?
Be prepared, be safe, and be respectful, and be responsible.
Great.
Right. Can you describe what being respectful looks like?
Talking good to others and being careful.
The next step is to assess the instruction of rules. The key is to determine whether formal plans for instruction exist.
So I see your all school-wide expectations. Show me where, or talk to me about how you ensured that they were all taught, or how you were ensured that everyone knew, what they meant, what it sounded like, what it looked like here for this building. Did you have some schedule for that? How did you address that?
Well, we did start off with a calendar, and we started off the first 3 school days where teachers had to cover each of the expectations throughout the school day. Usually we set it up by period. We cover one section of the building first period, next section of the building second period. Then we also had students create videos modeling and demonstrating what those expectations look like in different parts of the school buildings, where one's specific to the cafeteria and what's the expectations look like in the cafeteria as well.
We also completed walkthroughs, and we gave feedback to teachers and staff according to what we saw. And we made sure that expectations were visible, and we made sure we didn't leave anything out through those walkthroughs.
Great, and then is there some type of schedule for as the school year moves forward to see that there's consistent teaching of that as the year goes on, or as data shows? Do you have some thoughts about that moving forward?
Yeah, Ryan actually created a calendar for that.
I did create a calendar for that. And typically what we do is we have, after long breaks, we've got it set up so that teachers have to do a refresh on the expectations and teaching those expectations, because we want the teachers to be intentional about stating the expectations to the students, and that's a good time to do it.
Next, feedback is assessed. The coach helps the team consider whether procedures are in place for both positive and negative behavior.
Okay, so one of the other things that I want us to talk about and make sure we have a clear understanding is what are some of the positive systems we have in place to respond to when kids do the right thing?
We do have an online system set up to where teachers and staff can get online and reward kids for following the expectations, and they can, like, on time to class or doing it the school ways based on our expectations, and then they can earn points and get rewards and prizes based on those points.
Also with that online piece, there is the option to make the communication link between home and school, and pictures are shown and data is kept with those points, and the parents get to understand what goes on in the school day, how their child is being rewarded, and so they can carry that same expectation at home.
So I hear those are some things that we do school-wide. Is there anything else that we do maybe per team or per grade level?
We do also do a Student of the Week bulletin board in which we take pictures of each of the students and display those for an entire week. And then when that week is over, we get new Students of the Week, but they get to take those pictures home to show their parents that they're doing a good job.
And that's at each grade level. Our older students, they get recognized more individually. We come to their classes, we make them leaders, we put them on our news on the TV so that every student, we give them, recognizes them, we give them shouts out over our PA system at the end of the day.
And a lot of teams have their own bi-weekly reward system where they're rewarding every 2 weeks based on no referrals or making certain academic achievements. So a lot of teams have specific parties and little events that they'll do every 2 weeks to kind of motivate some of the struggling students.
That's great. So we look at our data and see the positives. I know that we all have misbehavior too. So how do you define with your staff or with your teachers, make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as maybe what is a managed behavior within the classroom or a behavior that needs to be managed outside of the classroom? How does your staff know very clearly what the delineation there is as far as behaviors?
At the beginning of the year, we had our teachers get together and do an activity where they sorted the levels of behavior. So they had different behavioral infractions and they sorted what's going to be managed by the office, the assistant principal, what the teachers are expected to manage in their own classrooms. And we had them sort that out so they could demonstrate their understanding of what they are expected to manage in their own classroom.
And then how is that communicated out so that it was really clear what the school-wide expectation was for all staff? How was that addressed?
So I took the feedback that we got from the behavior sort activity and placed it into the correct level on our flow chart. And that flow chart shows where the teachers, where a behavior sits on that level, and then what they should do based on the flow chart.
So there were intervention strategies in there, embedded in there for teachers as well. So based on what infraction or what misbehavior in the classroom, and then give them some tips and strategies on how to deal with that before it went to an administrator.
So everybody would be really clear on what should be managed in the classroom and even strategies embedded within for how a teacher could address that, and then also then what would be rise to the level to be outside the classroom.
Absolutely.
And the teachers actually, that is a behavior guide that they have to sign off on, along with their first day manuals and handbooks that we do during the gold day before we come back. So they sign that they are committed to handling their classroom managed behaviors, and then also giving the office what is deemed office managed behaviors.
And we've also made it a point to consistently bring it up during faculty meetings, gold days, because again, it's a piece of paper that could potentially go by the wayside. So we want to make sure that we are upfront as a team that this needs to be followed from day 1 to day 187.
Note that the coach gathered information from the team, from documents, and from the administrator to ensure an accurate picture of how consistent these policies are in place. Next, the focus shifts to the delivery of positive acknowledgments in the school. This is done with staff and student interviews as well as a look at documentation.
Oh, hey, Mr. Pascal, how are you? So glad I ran into you.
How are you?
Good. I just met with your PBIS team, so they were telling me some great things you're doing for school-wide rewards. So what have you seen happening this year?
We've already had one school-wide incentive movie from one of the incentives that we've reached. It's going very well. A lot of positive things going on here.
Good. that? And you feel like they look at that data when they meet together, determine what to do, what's working, what's not?
Absolutely. It meets every month. Absolutely, the data is very, very valuable for us, so we can get better and outreaching our goals, basically. So.
The last pieces involve assessment of the degree to which data is collected, stored, and used as part of an ongoing evaluation process.
So let's talk about behavior data for a minute. I know that we have the data, I know we can access it, but how do we use it? Where do we get it from? How do we use it? How do we look for patterns so that we know how to respond to students or certain groups within the building?
Well, one way we look at that data is we take the response calls that the office gets per teacher, and we count those by week, and we bring that back to the PBIS team, this committee, and we discuss the supports that we need to put in place for either certain students or certain teachers or even certain floors. We can get to active supervision, whether we need to change people or add more, add less, things of that nature.
We also look at the specific location that the event occurred, and we're able to pinpoint our hotspots and where we need additional support. So we'll really hone in on the areas where we're struggling and provide additional resources in those areas.
And where do you get that information? How do you
The
know that data?
DMC will let us know exactly where our issues are happening. If they're happening in the hallway, the cafeteria, the gym. The DMC is really specific and lets us know. So we'll hone in and bring more support members to those areas to be more proactive to kind of deter negative behavior.
So we not only use the DMC to see where things are happening, but what types of things are happening. So it gives you breaks down in percentages as far as is it cell phone usage or fighting or bullying. And then we can see what issues we need to address based on the number of referrals written, and then we can kind of rewrite the policies or expectations of those.
We can also do culture and climate walkthroughs where we're just walking through the building and making sure that we're seeing what we see based on the data, and can also kind of get some real-time looks at where our hotspots are.
And again, we revise our systems and our people, our resources, based on the data that we're seeing in on the DMC and also in our response calls reports.
Like, for example, one thing we noticed, we had all the referrals that were written in the hallway and stairwells. So we made sure staff knew that the expectation was for them to be in the hallway and actively supervising those hallways and stairwells in between classrooms.
This discussion is closely followed by more questions about how the data is used when the team gathers for its monthly meeting.
So I'm glad that we all talked about how we use the data, but when you guys meet every month, what do you sit down, what do you look at, how do you actually have conversations about what to do next and how to move forward?
We take the DMC. That's the great part about that is it gives us the locations of the referrals. And right now you can see that we're really struggling with the cafeteria where over 35% of our referrals are coming from, and that's just too high. So we know that there's expectations that aren't being met in that cafeteria, and that allows us to have the discussion of what we need to do to lower that percentage.
We also look at teachers and which teachers have the highest number of referrals. So if a teacher has the most referrals in the building, we'll kind of provide extra support for that teacher, go in, determine why the referrals are being written. Is it because the teacher has very high expectations, or is it because the teacher doesn't understand classroom managed versus office managed behaviors? So we really look at the teachers that are writing the referrals and how to provide them extra support and how to make sure that they're understanding classroom managed versus office managed behaviors.
And we also use a self-assessment survey when we get that feedback back every year. And then that's a good way for us to determine maybe where the disconnect is between administrators and teachers and what teachers feel like what areas we're missing out on as a staff, and those areas that we can go back and address that they see as a high need and high priority that we're missing the boat on.
We also are able to look at the teachers that have the lowest amount of referrals, and based on our walkthrough data, our engagement piece, when we're calculating the engagement, we're able to determine the teachers that have the lowest number of referrals also had the highest level of engagement when we were doing our walkthroughs. So there's a strong correlation between low referrals and high engagement in the classroom.
And we also take things such as the TFI because that's an outside person that comes into our building and really value their opinion because they don't have any bias towards what is actually going on. We then show that or share that with our staff as well, and I think it's important for what outsiders view how our school is running because we're on or inside and don't always see everything.
Because PBIS is made up of 3 tiers, assessing fidelity at only the first tier will not be enough. It is really important that school-wide systems be in place as a precursor for tiers 2 and 3. Remember that these next 2 tiers are not just something different, they are additions. Thus, if the larger tiers below each are not in place, then they would not be expected to work for the students who need them. At Tier 2, the tiered fidelity measures such as the TFI and ASA help the PBIS team to assess the degree to which these small group and targeted interventions are in place as a part of a systematic effort. There are some big ideas for all Tier 2 intervention systems. First, there must be a range of possibilities, and students are placed into interventions based on need. Think of it like having a menu of options and choosing the best fit. Second, these interventions must be established and familiar to the school so that students can be placed quickly without delay. Third, interventions must be implemented consistently across adults and time. And finally, all Tier 2 interventions require formative evaluation in relation to specific student goals. Typical examples of Tier 2 interventions include social skills groups that are put together to teach a set of skills in common to a group of students, homework clubs, check-in, check-out, and similar programs that can be applied to any who need it. At Tier 3, the key to fidelity is in making sure that any students who are not successful at Tier 2 are assigned to individualized assessment and the development of an individualized behavior plan. The key at this tier is individualization and a focus on interventions that meet each student's unique needs. Most often, behavior assessment is individualized here through a process known as Functional Behavior Assessment, or FBA. By assessing how the school environment, the students, the subject matter, the conditions, predict a behavior and how that behavior in turn affects the environment provides important information about the function or purpose of a behavior. If we know when and why a behavior occurs, we can teach appropriate replacement behaviors and create environments that are more likely to promote these behaviors. Fidelity at Tier 3 focuses on the degree to which assessment and intervention are highly individualized and implemented with very frequent measures of effectiveness. While the entire school will not be involved with any single behavior plan, any student on a behavior plan must receive consistent implementation from all the adults with whom they do come in contact. Take some time to consider a few points with regard to the assessment of fidelity. First, does your school have a set process for assessing the fidelity of your PBIS implementation? As a second thought, consider whether a coaching relationship is in existence to help your PBIS team with this task. We hope you found this series worthwhile and that you now have a greater understanding of PBIS. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact your school's resource teacher for more information. Thank you.